Good morning, everyone. Board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded that the full Authority Board meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Authority's website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the full Authority and or the KCCA Board of Directors. The recorded video of the full Authority meeting is not considered the official record of the meeting. The official record of the full Authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full Authority. Any declarations of pecuniary interest for members? Seeing none. We have no delegations today. We've got our minutes of our full Authority meeting from October 18th. Moved by Max. And the seconder. Bill? Questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, to approve those, all in favor? That's carried. Next we have our November 1st Personnel and Finance Committee minutes, and the recommendations that we're asking the board to endorse are outlined on the agenda there. The numbers, I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments on any of those. Okay, let's get them on the floor first. Can we get a mover and seconder? Get them on the floor. I've got Ian and Ralph and Marcel. That's you.
To you, Madam Chair. With respect to the position that the Personnel and Finance Committee is looking to recommend to the board to have a one-year position, I don't see any financials to other than what is expected in the job description as far as what a grade 2 position is for pay. How we're going to fund that, how that's going to be financed. Has there been any discussion about that I'm missing?
Yeah, that was had by the Personnel Committee.
Madam Chair, to Marcel, the position is completely funded through the campground's revenues, so there's no impact to the municipal levy at all.
So, and I guess I'd have to go back and look at the financials for the campground, but obviously if we put another 35,000 towards, or 40,000 towards, plus actually 15% for benefits or whatever it be, so it'll be substantial. Obviously the Personnel Finance Committee believe and staff believe that we can afford that, but I haven't seen the justification for it. As in, my fear is that at the end of the day we're going to have to raise the campground fees for covering this cost, and so I just want to know that that's not the case.
Madam Chair, just a follow-up again, this position has been flowed through the budget for 2018 and 2019 and was considered in the fees that we did look at increasing that you approved last month.
And it is a contract position, so we can review it after the year and see if it makes sense and we can sustain it. Okay. Any further questions on those minutes? Stephen?
The 2% increase, is that just the CA standard between all of those, right?
Pretty much it's the cost of living really is the standard, so yeah.
Thank you.
Anything further? If not, on the motion to approve the minutes, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next up, we've got our project tracking report.
Madam Chair, just a bunch of things have been happening over the past month. The biggest is the Authority, together with Upper Thames, hosted the Lake Erie Student Conference. Park closures have happened, and we've done some significant trail building and restoration. We'll bring a full report back to the members on that at a later date. But I would ask Louisa that just to play a short promo video on the Lake Erie Student Conference, provided our internet connection is favorable.
We're at the Lake Erie Student Conference, and we have over 125 students from the Thames Valley District School Board coming out today to learn more about Lake Erie. I'm really excited for the students here today to have an opportunity to have an interdisciplinary look at the Great Lakes, and they're getting out of their classroom and learning out in the environment, like learning from the local landscape, as well as getting to hear from some really, some people with local expertise who are really passionate about their careers as well.
Well, the biggest thing to take from today is not so much all the information, because there's a lot they throw at you, but it's more so like the passion behind it. And when you're talking to these instructors or speakers, you can really see like how much they care about what they do and like how much they love what they do.
I really enjoyed learning about all the invasive species that are in our area, and I didn't really realize how many there were before today and how they greatly impact our environment.
With my East Elgin students, the Environmental Leadership Program, they are what we call our future generations. So they're the kids that are going to be taking over either in terms of their hobbies or in terms of their university or in terms of their jobs beyond university, taking over for me just as I took over from my dad, whether it's being involved with wetlands and Ducks Unlimited or whether it's just their personal hobbies. These are the kids that are going to look after us in the future.
I hope that they learn that there's something we can do. There's a lot of little things we can do, and that it does have to be a lot of little things that everyone's doing together to help it. So like,
first we started learning about how there could be algae blooms and stuff, which I never really thought about before.
Really just got into the specifics about why they do certain things in their habitat and how they live.
It's been lots of fun learning stuff that I didn't know.
Really fun seeing like the bald eagle at the beginning of the day, the horned owl, and I'm really hands-on, so it's really catching my mind.
We put this conference together through a partnership with Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, the Thames Valley District School Board, and funding support from the Government of Ontario and an Ontario 150 grant.
Great, thanks Louisa. And actually I want to say thank you to Jen and Louisa for entertaining my niece while we had the Personnel and Finance Committee meeting, and it was Take Your Kids to Work Day, so thank you very much. She talked all the way back about the videos and the turtles and all of that kind of stuff, so she did enjoy her time here that day, so thank you for that too. Any questions or comments on the project tracking from members? Seeing none, we get a motion to receive as information. Bill and Stephen, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, next up, we've got our media coverage for October, November. That was in our advance package. I like this Halloween one with the species at risk. I was a little disappointed with the story in the Times Journal about the Lake Margaret. They didn't really cover it properly in the discussion. So we do have 2 members of council that want to allow some access onto the lake, but the approved management plan does not allow for that. So that won't be happening. And we're just hoping, I'm hopeful that that didn't set off a lot of concerns from the neighbors. So, because we don't want people live on the lake, it'll affect the water quality. So. I want to receive that for information. We're going to motion to receive that, the media coverage for information. Max? And Marcel? All in favor? That's carried. Watershed conditions report.
Madam Chair, the report just highlights that we have no concerns at this time. The water levels continue to be lower than normal, but are expected to increase. And we did put out our first just notice of the flood season starting early. Basically, it started a little bit early this year. Normally, it's the beginning of November, but that's already been done.
Any questions from members? Not, can we get a motion to receive? Steve and Ralph, all in favor? That's carried. And we're up to the holiday hours for the office. we do have a report from Elizabeth and looking to close the office to the public from December 25th to the 1st of January, noting that there would still be staff in and out as they feel necessary.
Move to accept that.
Bill. Stephen? Any discussion? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? That's carried. Moving right along here. Next up, we've got our proposed 2018 meeting dates. We'll note we have put them all in for the morning for daytime meetings. Noting that whether we're daytime or evening, we know that there are difficulties for some to get to every meeting. We know that happens. Discussion, comments from members? Marcel?
Yeah, I'm disappointed to see this. I think that nighttime meetings are most appropriate because it allows the public to be more able to participate in our meetings. And even as board members, I know that the summer meetings will be a problem for me, and I will be definitely have difficulty going to the summer meeting.
I did ask that this come forward with all daytime meetings, specifically so that we can have the staff here for our meetings. Our meetings are video recorded. They're posted to the website for anybody to view. And it's easier, a lot easier on staff scheduling to be here during the day to answer questions. Steve?
I'm just going to say that I used to, and I still kind of agree with you, Marcel, as far as the evening meetings. However, taking a look at the size of the audiences that we have for our meetings now, today is a good example that we have a pretty good group of members of the public who are here. So I'm not quite as concerned about the daytime meetings as I probably would have been, because we do consistently have members of the public here.
Further comments? No?
Yeah, I've thought for a while that this is kind of the best. I think I kind of agree with your comments earlier that, for staff and members of the public looking at the agenda ahead of time, if there's something they want to be there, I'm sure they would make themselves available.
Okay. Can we get a motion to receive that? Moved by Steve and Max. Further dialogue? Marcel?
That's for a recorded vote on this matter.
Recorded vote? We can do that. Is there any further questions or comments from the members? All right, recorded vote, please.
Madam Chair, on the motion, Bill Mackey,
Yes?
Max Moore,
Yes.
Ralph Winfield,
Yes.
Stephen Harvey,
Yes.
Ian Chard,
Yes.
Marcel,
No.
David is absent, Linda, Jared is absent. The motion passes.
Next up, we've got correspondence. There were two additional pieces that were handed out this morning, and along with the two that were, the one that was in our advance packages, and then the copy of the letter that we sent out as per board direction after the last meeting. So we do have a response. I quickly read it over and believe that it's just kind of a form letter. But we put in our comments, and I think that's what's important, that we passed on our concerns around Bill 148.
Madam Chair, if I can just make a couple of comments on the correspondence. The one in your advanced package, there was a letter from MPP Jeff York in regards to the German Solar Corporation. Just as note to members, the majority of that project is actually in the Lower Thames Conservation Authority region. And the portions that are in our watershed are outside of our regulation limits. So I have advised the MPP's office of that, and they have forwarded that letter to Lower Thames as well, because it's more fitting, I believe, to their attention. The two pieces of correspondence that were on your table this morning, though, as the chair mentioned, the letter Premier Wynn just came in yesterday, so I thought it would be best to share that with you today in terms of her response to your letter in regards to Bill 148. The other piece of correspondence, the tree and stewardship staff have brought to my attention just yesterday as well. And that is an email in regards to the closure of the Ontario tree seed plant. And for those of you who don't know, the Ontario government's tree seed facility has traditionally sold millions of seeds of up to 60 species of native trees every year. But the facility is scheduled to close in 2018, and that announcement was released earlier this summer. The tree facility has been operating since 1923, providing seeds for forestry and reforestation throughout the province. All of the nurseries that the authority does use for our tree stock, their seeds come from this facility. It's really unclear, I think, as to why the ministry has decided to close the facility, and there is concern, I believe, amongst our staff as well as our nurseries that we deal with, is that the impact to this government facility closing is obviously that tree seed would be commercialized or privatized, and that would ultimately increase the cost of our tree seedlings and to our programs and services. So one of the local nurseries, Somerville, that's the email that I included on your tables this morning, is asking for the authority's support in their cause to attempt to sway the government's decision to close this facility. And they're asking for our support in terms of a letter to the Premier and to the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. Now, if members have, the staff, the authority staff, believe this is a cause that we should support, and we're asking for the board's support of writing a letter as requested.
Okay. Comments, questions? All right. A motion to receive as well as to issue the letter of support. Ian? I'm sorry. Ian and Ralph, any further discussion and comments? All right. All in favor? That's carried. All right. Brings us up to the October Statement of Revenues and Expenditures. Questions or comments from members on the statements that were sent out in advance? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve? To receive, sorry. Bill and myself, all in favor? And that's carried. All right, new business. Oh, the health and safety policy, the big document we got last month. Which was a lot of reading. A lot of reading, I'm not gonna lie, but it's good.
Falling asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we do have a recommendation, so maybe we can get that moved and seconded on the floor for discussion. So that the recommendation is that KCCA's occupational health and safety policy be approved as presented. I can move and second around that.
Actually, could I make an amendment to the recommendation?
Yeah.
Or I was wondering if we could make an amendment to the recommendation as it stands now, or just add, dependent on an annual review by staff.
Okay. Yeah, we can add that before we put the recommendation on the floor. All right, so the motion is now be approved as presented and staff to do an annual review. Okay, I'm going to move right second for that. Bill? And Ian? Questions or comments on the document?
Very thorough.
It's very thorough. It's very thorough, it's good. A lot of work has gone into this, and thanks staff for that. questions, no comments?
Well, just comment the fact that it's a very important document.
It is very important.
And, you know, it protects our employees, but it also protects us, and we have rules that we have to follow that, so it's great.
All right, if there's no discussion, on the motion, all in favor? And that's carried. Oh, that reading, I thought we had a big discussion.
What is that?
I know, it's very thorough, it covers everything. The Kettle Creek Clean Water Initiative.
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I asked Betsy to attend a meeting for me in my absence this morning, so which created her absence here, but she did want to present a Kettle Creek Clean Water Initiative for your consideration this morning. This is a fabulous project that's coming forward this morning. The land outlined in yellow to the left of your screen is marginal land that's being retired. It was too difficult to access by machinery, and even in a dry summer like we had this past summer, it was too wet to farm. The proposal is to create 6 wetland cells to be excavated on the site, and following the construction of those wetland cells, KCCA would be planting the remaining area of 5 to 6 acres with trees in the spring of 2018. And so this project's significant twofolds. One is, as you recall, we're looking for spots to create wetlands and restore wetlands on the landscape. And 2, it's becoming rarer and rarer to find a site of this acreage to replant with trees. It's also a great example of an enhancement of forest interior habitat conditions. And as I said, provides much needed wetland habitat. The total estimated project cost is $22,000, and the grant that's being requested of the authority for the Clean Water Initiative is $3,000. Other funding that has been confirmed is $10,000 from Ducks Unlimited and $5,000 from the Ontario Power Generation. The work is going to be completed by Bob Ozon, Ducks Unlimited's contractor, and BF Environmental. And as I mentioned, Kettle Creek will be planting the trees. So the motion would basically to support Project 1704 with a grant of $3,000.
Whereabouts in the watershed is it? Like, I don't need to know the exact location, but is it?
West, correct?
Southwest here.
Okay. I don't need the exact location, just kind of curious. Questions, comments from members? No?
It doesn't seem like there's a downside to this one.
I know, right? And it's great that Ducks Unlimited is coming up with $10,000 too for this one, that's great. Marcel?
So did I miss something because I don't see this in the package? Is this a walk-on?
No. So there is a certain amount of anonymity that we expect from these from the projects, and normally we don't provide details in the advanced project. It's something that Betsy usually comes and presents to you here.
How many acres are we speaking? So how many acres of farmland are being turned into natural?
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Jeff to answer.
Yep. Go ahead, Jeff.
The total acreage outlined in the, I guess it's white, yellow, is
About 10 acres.
so.
Further questions or comments? Then can we get a motion to approve the $3,000 funding request for project 1704? Movement second, Stephen and Ralph. Questions, comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? That's carried.
Madam Chair, can I just ask one follow-up?
Yeah.
We the other day had a presentation about Alice as a funder of projects like this as well. Would a project like this work with their mandate as well? And could they get funding for that?
Something we could look into. I'm not sure in this case Alice is a perfect fit, given who the landowner is, but it's something that we can look into.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got the Dalewood Conservation Area Water Service. Can we just go back and pay the water bill, not $100 a month for this? So, the report is pretty clear, I think. Elizabeth? Anything to add?
I think we didn't, in terms of adding anything to the report. This is the map of the Dealwood area. Joe, can you just show them the details of the...
So if you're familiar with the area, this is the Dealwood campground over here on the far right. The water tower along the water tower line, the current municipal water main goes north across water tower line. You can see this little patch island in the agricultural field. That's the chamber in which then the water goes out to the, I guess, the original St. Thomas Ford Assembly Plant. So this was the original water supply there. I guess it was back in the early 80s, late 70s, when there was a drinking water well issue in the campground, and the authority assessed its options and went forward with having a water main service provided from this chamber that runs out in the farm field along the municipal along the municipal right of way, down the water tower line, and into Dealwood. At the time, the exploration and the cost and everything to do the water main was at the cost and the responsibility of the Conservation Authority. So permission was obtained from the county. This was a county road jurisdiction at the time, from the Township of Yarmouth, the Municipality of St. Thomas, and the water supply to tie into this chamber here. The uniqueness of this situation is typically when you have a water line into private property, the valve or the water meter is located at the private property line. In this situation, the water meter is actually back out in the chamber out this way. So any water bills we receive are monitoring from this location. As identified in the report, we're aware of at least 3 water leaks that's occurred within this water main since its establishment. Since the last one that was recognized, I guess 10 years ago or so, we've made arrangements with the municipality now. So when we shut off the water in the campground, which is up under the hydro corridor in here, at the same time we notify the municipal staff and they go out and shut this water valve off to avoid any of these potential leaks that have occurred. The one that we received in 2015 was a result of, again, a leak within the system, but the valve wasn't turned off by the municipality at the same time when the park closed, when it was turned off in there, and then we've assumed this new bill here. So that's kind of the background of the water main and its location and its unique setup.
Heather, through Heather to Joe, have you considered the cost of drilling a well as compared to the cost of rerunning that water line with a bigger diameter line?
Madam Chair, to Ralph, that was the original discussion that they had back in 1979, and the cost comparison back then is hooking up to a safe, secure, monitored drinking water supply was just slightly higher than drilling your own well, that you in turn have the maintenance cost of and the worry of ensuring that you have a good, clean, safe water supply. As a staff person, I wouldn't be recommending that as a solution to this problem. We operate our own drinking water system out at Lake Whitaker. It's a significant amount of cost and a significant amount of reliability on staff and this board to ensure that there's a safe drinking water supply out there. Here, that onus is on the drinking water system. That's why back in 1979 they made this decision. Unfortunately, at that time, there was this unusual arrangement that was put in place in which the authority paid for the infrastructure, but for whatever reason, the water main was placed on municipal property and not on our property, on the landowner property. It's resulted in the situation that we are in here today, which, from my understanding, does not exist anywhere else in the municipality. Marcel?
So, through you, Madam Chair, to echo our General Manager's comments, the liability we take on to have a well, we don't want. In fact, I'd love to get Lake Whitaker on town water. But I did some checking with our municipality. I don't have all the answers yet, but from what I'm gathering, most times when the municipality puts a service in, the initial cost is borne by the wanter of the service, but after that, it's carried on by the municipality, particularly when it's on municipal property. And so I really do think that this request is warranted to have them reconsider. I think some stronger language to point out that this is on their property and that this service initially was paid for by us. I'm assuming that's correct, but that over its life, it's inherited by the municipality, and I'm just baffled that they're not accepting responsibility for this. And yeah, it's definitely, I'll move the motion, but I wonder if it shouldn't be stronger.
So Marcel moving the motion, can I get a seconder? Ian, and yeah, I had the same concerns. Like usually it gets assumed by the municipality after so long, so I was surprised. But Steve?
Comment and question. First of all, comment. Middlesex Center is known province-wide as having some of the most expensive water.
It is, it's most expensive.
And the reason, one of the large reasons for that is because we operate 2 communal well systems.
Yes.
One for 12 houses and one for 69 houses. And it's super expensive. And the faster you can get away from communal wells, the better. Because we have a subdivision of 69 houses that is 0.8 kilometers away from the pipeline, and we're just trying to find the money to hook that up. So never, ever, ever, unless you absolutely have to, put a well in. Second thing, though, and this is where I scratch my head a little bit, why is the shut-off on municipal property and not on our private property?
That's where it should be, yes. That's just the way it was set up.
Because the municipality would then be responsible for any leaks that occurred between wherever it's and the shut-off. So I would insist if we have to put a new line in, that the shut-off, the single shut-off goes on our property, and the municipality is responsible from then on. Like, that's the only logical way to do it.
That's the way this should have been done, but I mean, 40 years ago, they didn't do that. It was a different scenario completely, so.
Unique situation.
Unique is a good word, yes.
And Madam Chair, just to Marcel's point, in the strongness of the letter, the reason we did put in the agreement that the authority originally had with Elgin County, that expired, was done 20 years ago. But the original agreement was recognition that the authority wanted this project and was assuming the cost of that project. So I'm not saying that equates what scenario where we are in here now, but there's a lot of uniqueness or unusualness about this situation. So I do bring that to the members' attention.
Is there any possibility of any development that would expect the Central Elgin to provide water to other locations near the Dalewood Conservation Authority?
Currently, no. All of the urban area expansion areas have been going south, but there's nothing currently in the next 20-year horizon planned for future development moving north.
Madam Chair, but there is a benefit, as I mentioned in the letter, to the municipality in terms of the increased size of the main that they are considering. And that was one of the points that I raised in terms of our necessity for water. The 50 pipe would be fine. Going up to 100 does present a benefit to the municipality in terms of fire protection.
Do you know the difference in cost between the 50 and the 100? Like, were they able to provide that? I'm just wondering if there's, it wouldn't be a huge difference, would it? Marcel?
Madam Chair, and I think you'll probably be the person that can answer this best. Is Dalewood in the Sullivan area of St. Thomas?
No.
Okay,
It's in Central.
It is Central. And there is no built-up area on the official plan in Central Alberta surrounding St. Thomas. Okay, so
Not
it's-
on that side.
So everything around it's agricultural.
Yeah, that's all agricultural lands, I think. Other questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor to send the letter, asking for reconsideration. On the motion, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay. We're up to our work plan, up to our budget. Where is staff?
Madam Chair, we were hoping to finish all of our presentations today, but I did, in recognition of the length of the agenda, we did move the GIS IT presentation to December. And hopefully Cliff will be here and give you that presentation of the UAVs. I have included in the advanced package the draft levy. So that was circulated for all of your attention. You can see the increases.
Or decrease.
Or decreases. That each municipality would have in regards to the 7% increase that is proposed for 2018. But first up, we have Jennifer. She's going to give 2 presentations. Or sorry, Joe. Didn't mean to ignore you and your planning and regulations. Joe's first. Joe's first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think with planning and regulations, it's not obviously a heavy capital budget item, it's more operating. But that program really is fulfilling our responsibilities under plan input and review and our Section 20 regulations. So just a short cap under the Planning Act. We're a public agency that's required to be circulated on Planning Act applications, and we have provincial delegated responsibilities to comment on the province's natural hazard policies. So implementing that program, as well as our implementation and compliance with our Section 20 regulations program. Special projects and enhancements for 2018 and 2019. Consideration, really, we may have some heavy involvement in potential compliance of our Section 20 regulations. There's some outstanding matters to be considered there in 2018, as well as implementing some of the potential changes that may come out of the recent C Act review, as they are changing Section 28 and providing some new authority within there. We'll have to do some training and consideration of implementing those changes. In terms of expenses, moving forward, I guess looking ahead beyond 2018, like I said, there really isn't any capital. Just referencing the comment of potential increased legal expenses for compliance with the reg. As well, there's an ongoing budget item in this department for potential assistance for professional review of applications. So when we deal with controversial applications, we don't have a professional engineer on staff or a coastal engineer. There is a small budget there that staff rely on to obtain that professional opinion and assistance of some applications. And as well, again, just the legal expenses for 20 and 2019. Looking forward beyond 2020, there's been some discussions with neighboring CAs of shared resources and things like that to find better efficiencies. And one common discussion that appears to be getting potentially closer for discussion is the sharing of a compliance officer. So when we deal with compliance under our Section 28 regulations, staff, we are trained, we're certified as provincial offenses officers, but we don't apply that skill regularly on a daily basis. I think in our authority, we tend to have on average 1 to 3 notice of violations a year, not very many that take up a lot of my time. But when we do have those violations occur and there's consideration of potential legal charges, there is a lot of time that's involved with that and knowledge base of the legislation moving forward. So as we go on to the future budget years, there may be consideration of having further discussions with our neighboring CAs of a shared staff there. As well with changes to the CA Act and other things that have been going on, at some point we will need to revisit our current Section 28 policies, and we'll have to do a policy update which requires public consultation. Currently, staff would be considering a third-party consultant to assist with facilitating those public consultations for input into those policy developments. and as well consideration to potential administrative support. Dealing with such a program like this, you can imagine there's quite a bit of paperwork that has to be done and filed and things like that, and there's some need in the future potentially to consider some administrative support. The only capital expenses that can be thought of again is fulfilling our responsibilities under the provincial delegation of completing watershed planning projects or technical studies to assist in our input to the municipality's official plans. So these are things like historically we've done floodplain mapping for the watershed, we've done a hydraulic study down in Port Stanley. Most recently we participated in the shoreline management plan. Moving forward in years to come, I think the only one I can currently think of at the top of my head would be consideration of revisiting our floodplain mapping. Now that we have more accurate topographic data that we can rely on, and see if we can fine or tune or provide more accurate floodplain mapping to participate in our natural heritage, or sorry, our natural hazard input into the municipal planning policies.
Questions for Joe? Marcel?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Joe, your last point on floodplain mapping, what historical data did you use when it was created?
Yeah, so originally the authority only had 2 areas of floodplain mapping, which were flood damage centers, which were based on high engineering topographic reach basis. And then with the implementation of the new generic regulation in 2006, there was a watershed scale mapping that was done. And it was relied on primarily the Ontario base mapping, which I believe is the late 80s, and some of the topographic data that we had, but not necessarily to the scale or to the degree of what we can produce now, especially with the assistance of our new GIS and IT program. We can certainly provide much higher accuracy of information by considering updating our mapping.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay. You're getting off easy, Joe. No question.
It's a light budget.
Okay.
I think Jennifer can take over for flood forecasting and warning. Jen really commandeers 2 departments at the authority. She's going to showcase both of them.
So first, flood forecasting and monitoring in dams. I apologize. I feel like I haven't talked to you guys in ages, so I may be a little rusty. So the flood forecasting program is one of our mandated programs, operates year-round, mostly to provide data sources and assistance to municipalities during flood events. We have a network of gauges and precipitation equipment that helps us collect our own data, as well as we make use of other sources of data as well to provide up to the minute or as close to up-to-date information as we can. We also operate and maintain our flood control and erosion control structures throughout the watershed. We have 2 main dams, Union and Dalewood, as well as the South Old Wall erosion control structure. For 2018 and 19, the program is status quo. We are going to continue making use of the weather event fact sheet for some of our significant weather events. Communication tool to provide a little bit more information as to what we do before a main event, what happens during, and results afterwards, how we got the information out to the public and whatnot. For dam maintenance, currently we'll be working with the City of St. Thomas on the Dalewood Drive Bridge Replacement Project, as well as looking towards doing more WECI applications to get funding to do some maintenance work on the dams as these things occur or are needed. In the near future, new stone for some of the areas on the Dalewood Dam. 2020 and beyond, one of the main things that a lot of agencies are looking at is climate change and how we can mitigate and address climate change. Weather patterns, in particular, the number and intensity and frequency of major storm events is something that has been changing or increasing. This is a map that we made in 2014 that shows one main weather event that shows how precipitation can be really localized and sporadic in our watershed. The darker areas show the intense amount of rain, and then lighter colors show the little bit of rain. So some things that we might be looking at in the future are increasing our precipitation monitoring network. It's a source of data that can be used by a variety of applications throughout the authority, not just flood forecasting and warning, but choosing areas for tree planting or BMPs, looking at erosion, water quality, a whole slew of things can tap into precipitation data, as well as online data access to the public in a more one window approach situation where you can go to our website and maybe get real-time information on local precipitation or stream flow, that sort of thing. Moving on to environmental monitoring. For 2017, continue working on our long-term monitoring programs and partnerships, everything from surface water to groundwater, benthic monitoring, fish monitoring. We do it all here, so we have a lot of data that we collect every year. One of our big projects for 2018 will be the Watershed Report Card. It is a CA, Conservation Ontario initiative communication tool so that we can provide data out to the public in a way that it's easy to understand. It gives a grade for 3 different types of data: groundwater, surface water, and forest information. This year it's scheduled for release on March 22nd, next year, March 22nd, which is World Water Day. Data collected over the last 5 years will be organized into a CO design template, and it allows CAs and partners to better target programs and funding dollars for measuring environmental change. So we're looking forward to that. A couple of other projects of note, DFO drain classification. We've been getting through the drain classification, working with DFO. It involves going out to municipal drains, looking at flow and the types of fish that live in those drains. It allows the drains to be classified into a variety of levels. So far, every year, we've been able to get a little bit of money to go towards completing that project, and hopefully that will continue in the future. Also, Lake Margaret, hopefully to explore a closer working relationship with City of St. Thomas on the proposed environmental stewardship committee. That would be great. And also continuing possibly the fee-for-service that we started in 2006 on collecting lake monitoring data on Lake Margaret. For 2020 and beyond, main program constraints for the environmental monitoring program are staffing and funding. A lot of the jobs related to the program involve working in and around water, and a lot of them are seasonal in nature. So it requires often short-term amounts of assistance for the program. Working in and around water for safety, you want to have a buddy system going on. So over the years, we've been able to secure small amounts of funding, not enough to maybe cover one staff to help me all year round, but enough that we can help to efficiently extend other contract staff, in particular the water resource technician, which has been instrumental in a lot of projects that we've done this year. And we'll also look to explore additional opportunities, educational opportunities to expand and improve the program in the next couple of years.
And the Lake Margaret one, there is a spot for a KCC and staff person on that. So we'll be looking at forming that committee, getting it up and going in the beginning of the year. So I'm guessing that you want that position, and you guys can fight rock, paper, scissors. You guys figure that out. But there is a spot on that for the Environmental Stewardship Committee. The goal of that committee is not just about Lake Margaret. The first probably first couple of years will be really kind of focus on that, but then looking at citywide environmental issues as well. So, any questions, comments?
Can we go back one slide?
I'll see if I can make that happen. Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, the DFO drain classification project. Just when I think about the details of that, a flag is raised in my mind. And so staff classify drains. Is there ever a public discussion or a public information to how they're classified so there can be some discussion about that rather than it just happening and then staff relying on what's in front of them as far as that information? What I guess I'm trying to say is if municipal drains are classified incorrectly, it can be devastating to the farmers. And I'd rather it be right in the first place than have to go back afterwards when it's already documented that this is the way it's supposed to be. Is there any check and balance in the process? Do they come to the board for classification where the public have a chance to see and comment?
So Madam Chair to Marcel, the data that is collected using DFO guidelines, and that information is sent to DFO. They do the classification. It is not done by staff.
But it doesn't change the question that do landowners get an opportunity to comment or question the classification?
That I don't have an answer for. I don't believe so.
If I may, I could help with part of that. My understanding is DFO established they've changed the process where it's not an opinion based for classification. They've established criteria based on factual data collected from the water course. So I can't answer if DFO what the public consultation process was for that criteria, but it was heavily vetted through a provincial committee group that was dealt with OMAFRA, DFO, conservation authorities, municipal drainage superintendents, went through the process to define that list of criteria. So it's set up now where you collect the data, you input the answers, it automatically classifies it based on the data. They really tried to get away from a personal opinion classification and went to that process. So that's part of how they classify the drains through that process.
So through you, Madam Chair, in the municipal process, when lands are zoned and lands are rezoned or there's different changes that happen to lands, there's a public process before it's just automatically put in place. And only because I've heard of some stories that make it difficult for farmers to maintain these drains once they've been classified. I'm a little bit cautious about there not being a public process for this. And I'm hearing that it may not be asked to do it, but because we're involved, I can't help but ask the questions and think that there should be somehow input from our landowners as this is done. And I don't have the answers, I just have the questions.
Any further questions or comments? All right. You want to receive those?
Yeah, can you just receive all of those reports?
And a motion to receive all of those for information. Max? All in favor? That's carried. That brings us up to our section 28 permits.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 6 permits have been issued since the last meeting. Majority of them are fulfilling development requirements that have been reviewed and addressed through the municipal planning process, and the others relate to redevelopment of properties that were supported by technical studies. Staff's just seeking acknowledging concurrence with those permits.
Okay. We have a member and seconder for that recommendation. Marcel? And Stephen, questions or comments on any of them? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right. That is the conclusion of our open session.
Madam Chair, if I may, and I know this is sort of out of line, but after having passed the motion that we did back with the water for Dalewood, just an afterthought, would it be more prudent for us to take a delegation to Central Elgin rather than just send a letter?
That's a good question. Staff have been discussing with staff. Would that be appropriate?
I can certainly how about I reach out to the administrator of Central Elgin and see how he feels
that would be.
That would be good, because I think it might be more insightful and there may be more impact for us to go as a delegation rather than just send a letter that they can reject easily.
Okay. Good point, I'll look into that. Can I get a motion to go in camera? Stephen? Ian, all in favor? Is it carried?
5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll take